I'm Sierra, 34, standing in the back of a funeral home, clutching a white lily while the family who raised me pretends I don't exist. My mother just walked right past me, dabbing at dry eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief. My father didn't even glance my way. My brothers, golden boys extraordinaire, are accepting condolences like minor celebrities. Meanwhile, I'm the stranger at my own grandfather's funeral, the only person who ever showed me kindness in that house. I don't cry. I don't scream, I simply stand straighter, my expression neutral as I watch the performance unfold. Where are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments below and hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever felt invisible in your own family. You'll definitely want to stick around for what happened next. The thing about being the family disappointment is that eventually you stop disappointing yourself. I learned that lesson early. I was 4 when I came to live with the Prestons. At least that's what they told me. No memories before that. Just fragments, a woman's laugh, the smell of cinnamon, a blue toy truck, nothing concrete. From day one, I was different. While Matthew and James had their own rooms with custom furniture and the latest toys, I slept in what was essentially a glorified closet on a mattress that sagged in the middle. While they got new clothes for each season, I wore hand-me-downs from cousins I'd never met. While they got birthday parties with themes and professional entertainers, I got a store-bought cupcake, if anyone remembered at all. Sierra, the dishes need washing. Sierra, fold the laundry. Sierra, why can't you be grateful for everything we've done for you? That was my childhood. Being reminded daily that I was Charity, a burden, the cleaning lady who didn't get paid. Only Grandpa Walter saw me. He'd slip me books when no one was looking. He taught me to play chess during his visits. He'd wink at me across the dinner table when Patricia, never Mom, complained about my mediocre grades or unruly hair. You've got fire in you, kiddo, he'd whisper when we were alone. Don't let them put it out. I left the day after my 21st birthday. No dramatic exit. I simply packed my few belongings while everyone was at one of James' football games and walked out the door. I got a job cleaning hotel rooms, rented a room in a house with 5 other people, and started community college classes at night. For 13 years, I built my life brick by brick, got my business degree, saved every penny, opened a small bakery that grew into a neighborhood favorite. I made my own family of friends who chose me, who celebrated my wins and held me through my losses. I only saw the Preston once during those years, ran into Patricia at the grocery store. She looked me up and down, sniffed, and said, "Still cleaning up after people I see." I didn't correct her, let her think I was still a maid. Her opinion had stopped mattering long ago. Then last week, I got the call from a lawyer. Grandpa Walter had died. Against my better judgment, I decided to go to the funeral. Not for them, for him. So, here I stand in a simple black dress that cost more than my monthly food budget as a college student, watching the family who never wanted me pretend to grieve a man whose kindness they never appreciated. I'm about to leave. This farce has gone on long enough. When an elderly woman approaches me. She's small, hunched with age, her white hair pulled back in a neat bun. I don't recognize her, but there's something in her eyes. A purpose. Sierra Preston, she asks, her voice barely above a whisper. Just Sierra? I correct her automatically. I dropped their last name the day I left. She glances around nervously, then pulls me aside behind a large floral arrangement. I've waited so long for this moment, she says, her hands trembling as she reaches into her oversized purse. I'm sorry. Do I know you? No, dear, but I know you. She pulls out a yellowed envelope. I worked at Sunshine Adoption Services in 1994. I helped process your paperwork. Something cold slides down my spine. My adoption paperwork? She looks at me with such sadness that I take a step back. You were never adopted, Sierra. You were stolen. My first instinct is to laugh. It bubbles up inside me, inappropriate and jarring. The old woman, she hasn't told me her name yet, looks at me with such earnest intensity that the laugh dies in my throat. Stolen? What are you talking about? I keep my voice low, too aware of the Preston family mingling just yards away. My name is Edith Mercer, she says, pressing the envelope into my hands. I've been looking for you for 30 years. I take the envelope automatically, feeling the brittle paper between my fingers. This is crazy. I was adopted. The Prestons, the papers were forged. I helped forge them. Her confession comes out in a pained whisper. It's the greatest sin of my life, and I've spent decades trying to make it right. Where are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments below, and hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever had your entire reality shattered in an instant. You'll definitely want to stick around for what happened next. I open the envelope with trembling fingers. Inside are newspaper clippings, yellowed with age. The headlines jump out at me. Toddler vanishes from family home. Search continues for missing Wilson Aries. Reward doubled as hope fades. There's a photo of a little girl, blonde curls, gap-toothed smile, wearing a red dress. She's sitting on a man's lap, a woman beside them, all three smiling at the camera. "That's you," Edith says quietly. "With your real parents, Benjamin and Claire Wilson." I stare at the child in the photo, searching for myself in her features. The hair is right. I still have those unruly blonde curls, but the happy, carefree expression, I don't recognize that at all. Why? The question comes out strangled. Why would they take me? Edith glances toward Richard Preston, who stands receiving condolences with a practiced mournful expression. "Money. Your birth father was extremely wealthy. The original plan was ransom, but when the story hit national news, they panicked. They couldn't return you without getting caught." My mind reels trying to process this revelation. A memory surfaces. Richard screaming at Patricia after too many drinks. "We're stuck with her forever because of you." I'd assumed it was about the adoption that Patricia had insisted on taking in a child and Richard had resented it. "How do you know all this?" I ask, suddenly suspicious. I overheard Richard talking to someone on the phone at the agency about how they needed documentation for a private adoption immediately. Cash only, no questions. "Oh, I needed the money. My husband was sick. Medical bills piling up," her eyes filled with tears. "I've regretted it every day since. But why come forward now? After all these years, I've been trying to find you. When I saw Walter Preston's obituary, I knew there was a chance you might be at the funeral. I had to take it." She reaches into her purse again and pulls out a more recent newspaper clipping. "Your parents never stopped looking. The reward money?" She hesitates. "It's up to $91 million now." I nearly dropped the envelope. $91 million. Your father built a tech empire in the years after you disappeared. He's devoted a significant portion of his fortune to finding you. The room spins slightly. I grab the edge of a nearby chair to steady myself. They're still alive. My real parents very much so. Still in Seattle, still hoping. I look across the room at the Preston. These people who stole me, who treated me like a servant, who made me feel worthless every day of my childhood. A cold, clarifying anger washes over me. "Tell me everything," I say to Edith, my voice steadier than I feel. "I want to know exactly what happened." As Edith begins to speak, I notice Richard watching us from across the room. His face suddenly pale. Our eyes lock and I see something I've never seen there before. Fear. Good. The drive back to my apartment is a blur. My hands grip the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turn white, but I don't feel it. My mind is racing, cycling through every childhood memory, re-examining them through this new horrifying lens. The isolation, the different treatment, the absence of baby photos, the way they never celebrated the day I came to them like other adoptive families might. The strange hushed arguments that would stop when I entered a room. It wasn't that they didn't want an adopted child. It was that they were criminals who had stolen a human being. I pull into my parking spot behind the bakery and sit in the car, engine off, staring at nothing. Eventually, I grab the envelope Edith gave me and go upstairs to my apartment. It's a small place, but it's mine. Exposed brick walls, plants thriving on every windowsill. Bookshelves packed with volumes that I bought with my own money. The scent of vanilla and cinnamon that follows me home from the bakery below. This is the life I built for myself despite them. Where are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments below and hit that like and subscribe button. If you've ever had to completely reimagine your past, you'll definitely want to stick around for what happened next. I spread the newspaper clippings across my kitchen table, arranging them chronologically. The story unfolds before me like a nightmare. April 12, 1994. 4-year-old Sierra Wilson disappears from the backyard of her family's Seattle home while her nanny steps inside to answer the phone. April 13, 1994. Parents, Benjamin and Claire Wilson make emotional plea for their daughter's return. Offer $500,000 reward, no questions asked. April 20, 1994. Reward increased to $1 million as search continues. FBI joins investigation. May 5, 1994. New lead in Wilson kidnapping proves false. Family devastated. The articles continue tracking a case that gradually faded from front-page news, but never disappeared entirely. Every year on the anniversary of my disappearance, there would be an update. The reward increasing. My parents opening a foundation for missing children. Age progression photos that I note with a chill look remarkably like me. The most recent clipping is from just 3 months ago for the 30th anniversary of my kidnapping. My father, now 67, and mother, 65, still holding out hope. The reward now at a staggering $91 million, a testament to their refusal to give up. There's a website listed at the bottom of the article, fndir.org. With shaking hands, I open my laptop and type it in. The site loads and I find myself staring at my own face, or what technology predicts I would look like now. The resemblance is uncanny. There are photos of my parents, older now, gray-haired, but with the same determined expressions they wore in the earliest clippings. There's a contact form, a phone number, an email address, ways to submit tips or information. My finger hovers over the keyboard. What would I even say? Hi, I think I'm your long-lost daughter. The people who raised me stole me from you and treated me like garbage for 21 years. My phone rings, startling me so badly, I knock over my cold cup of coffee. It's an unknown number. For a moment, irrationally, I think it's them. My real parents somehow sensing I've discovered the truth, but that's ridiculous. I answer wearily. Hello, Sierra. It's Richard Preston's voice, cold and controlled as ever. We need to talk. My blood freezes in my veins. I have nothing to say to you. That old woman at the funeral, what did she tell you? The truth, I say simply, which is more than you ever did. There's a long pause, then a heavy sigh. It's complicated, Sierra. It wasn't supposed to happen the way it did. We kidnapped a child. I interrupt, my voice rising. Stole me from my family. Made me work like a servant while treating your biological children like princes. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. You're criminals. And now I'm going to make sure everyone knows it. I hang up before he can respond. My heart pounding. My phone immediately rings again. I ignore it. Then again and again. Finally, a text. Think very carefully about what you do next. You have no proof. No one will believe you. And you have no idea what you're up against. The threat is clear, but instead of fear, all I feel is resolve. I return to the findsierra.org website. And before I can second guess myself, fill out the contact form with a simple message. I think I might be Sierra Wilson. I need to talk to Benjamin and Claire Wilson as soon as possible. I hit send and then I wait. I don't sleep that night. How could I? Every time I close my eyes, I see that little girl in the red dress. The happy family I was stolen from. The life I should have had. By morning, I'm running on adrenaline and coffee. I open the bakery at 5 a.m. as usual, going through the motions of mixing dough and heating ovens. My assistant, Zoe, arrives at 6 o'clock and immediately knows something's wrong. You look like you've seen a ghost, she says, tying on her apron. Everything okay? I consider telling her everything, but the words stick in my throat. It's too much, too unbelievable. Just didn't sleep well, I say instead. Can you handle the front today? I need to stay in the kitchen. Baking has always been my therapy. There's something soothing about the precision of it, the chemistry, the transformation of simple ingredients into something wonderful. Today, I lose myself in it, trying to quiet the chaos in my mind. Where are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments below and hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever had to keep a life-changing secret. You'll definitely want to stick around for what happened next. By noon, I've checked my email and the contact form on findier.org a dozen times. Nothing. I try not to feel disappointed. It's probably a frequently used form filled with false leads and wild claims. Mine might be just another in a long line of dead ends for the Wilsons. My phone rings again. Richard, for the 5th time today. I silence it and continue crimping pie crusts with more force than necessary. The bell above the bakery door chimes. Zoe's cheerful greeting floats back to the kitchen, followed by a male voice I don't recognize. Then Zoe appears in the doorway looking puzzled. There's a guy here asking for you. Says he's a private investigator. My heart leaps into my throat. Did he say what it's about? Nope. Just that it's important. I wipe my flour-covered hands on my apron and step into the front of the bakery. A tall man in a well-cut suit stands examining the pastry case. He's in his 50s with salt and pepper hair and the watchful eyes of someone who notices everything. I'm Sierra, I say, and his head snaps up. Ms. Preston. I'm Daniel Harlow. I represent Benjamin and Claire Wilson. He holds out a business card. Is there somewhere we can speak privately? My legs nearly give out beneath me. Yes, we can go upstairs to my apartment. I lead him through the back of the bakery and up the narrow staircase to my place, hyper-aware of my racing pulse and the flour dust I'm trailing behind me. I apologize for showing up without warning, he says as I close the apartment door behind us. But when the Wilsons received your message last night, they asked me to verify your claim as quickly as possible. That was fast, I say, still standing awkwardly by the door. I only sent it last night. The Wilsons have been waiting 30 years, Miss Preston. They don't waste time when it comes to leads about their daughter. He studies me carefully. I have to say, you bear a striking resemblance to Claire. I don't know what to say to that, so I offer him a seat at my kitchen table, which is still covered with the newspaper clippings Edith gave me. I see you've been doing some research, he comments, glancing at the articles. A woman approached me at a funeral yesterday. Edith Mercer. She said she helped forge adoption papers for me. I take a deep breath. She told me I was kidnapped. Daniel nods, making notes in a small notebook. We are familiar with Ms. Mercer. She contacted the Wilson family about 5 years ago with her suspicions, but didn't have enough information to locate you. So, you believe me? I'm here to verify your claim. The Wilsons have had many false leads over the years. People hoping for a piece of the reward money. A flush of anger rises to my cheeks. I don't care about the money, he raises an eyebrow. 91 million is a lot not to care about. What I care about is the truth, I say firmly. And finding my real family. If that's them. Daniel's expression softens slightly. That's what we're here to find out. He reaches into his briefcase and pulls out a small kit. I need to take a DNA sample, a simple cheek swab. The Wilsons have their profiles on file with several databases. We should have preliminary results within 24 or 48 hours. I nod, suddenly nervous. What if I'm wrong? What if this is all some elaborate mistake? As he prepares the swab, my phone buzzes with another text from Richard. We're coming over. We need to talk face to face. I show the message to Daniel, whose expression immediately turns serious. The Prestons. They know you've discovered the truth. Richard called me last night. He was threatening. Daniel quickly finishes taking the DNA sample and seals it in a labeled container. Miss Preston, Sierra, I need you to listen carefully. If what you're saying is true, the people who raised you are guilty of a federal crime with no statute of limitations. They have every reason to want to silence you. A chill runs through me. You think they'd hurt me? I think people who would steal a child are capable of many things. He hands me a card with his cell phone number. Call me immediately if they contact you again. And don't meet with them alone. As if on cue, my phone buzzes with another message. We're outside your bakery. Come down now. I show Daniel, who immediately takes out his phone. I'm calling the police. Police officers Mills and Barrett sit at my kitchen table, taking statements while Daniel paces by the window, phone pressed to his ear. Below us, the Prestons wait in the bakery, unaware of what's happening upstairs. Let me get this straight, Officer Mills says, brow furrowed as she reviews her notes. You believe you were kidnapped as a child and the people who raised you are the kidnappers? Yes. And you've only just discovered this yesterday at a funeral. She exchanges a glance with her partner that clearly says they think I'm crazy. But then Daniel joins us at the table, sliding a tablet across to the officers. I've just emailed you the case file on Sierra Wilson's kidnapping from 1994, including original police reports, FBI involvement, and subsequent investigation updates. I've also included Ms. Mercer's statement from 5 years ago regarding her involvement in falsifying adoption records. The officers look at the tablet, scrolling through what must be an extensive file. Their expressions shift from skepticism to surprise. This is quite a case, Officer Barrett says finally. But without DNA confirmation, which is being expedited as we speak, Daniel interrupts. In the meantime, the people who likely committed this crime are downstairs, possibly intending to threaten or harm Ms. Preston. Where are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments below and hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever had to face people who betrayed you. You'll definitely want to stick around for what happened next. Officer Mills straightens. We'll go speak with them. Miss Preston, you should stay up here for now. Actually, I say standing up. I want to face them with you present. Daniel looks like he wants to object, but something in my expression must convince him. I think that's a reasonable request, officers. Sierra deserves answers. We descend the stairs to the bakery. Zoe has closed the shop, flipping the sign to closed for family emergency, more accurate than she could possibly know. Through the glass door, I can see Richard and Patricia Preston waiting, faces tight with barely contained anger. Officer Mills opens the door. Mr. and Mrs. Preston, I'm Officer Mills. This is Officer Barrett. We'd like to ask you some questions. Patricia's perfectly coiffed head whips around. What is the meaning of this, Sierra? Why are the police here? I step forward, Daniel slightly behind me, a reassuring presence. They're here because I know the truth about who I am, about what you did. Richard's face drains of color. Whatever that old woman told you at the funeral was the truth. I finish for him. I was never adopted. You stole me. That's absurd. Patricia scoffs, but her voice wavers slightly. Officer, our daughter is clearly having some kind of breakdown. I'm not your daughter, I say, my voice steady despite the emotions churning inside me. My name is Sierra Wilson. My real parents are Benjamin and Claire Wilson, and they've been looking for me for 30 years. Richard steps forward, finger pointed at Daniel. And who is this? Someone taking advantage of her delusions? Daniel Harlow, private investigator representing the Wilson family. He hands Richard a card, which the older man doesn't take. We've already collected DNA evidence that will confirm Sierra's identity. This is ridiculous, Patricia sputters. We have adoption papers. Everything was legal. Forged papers, I say quietly. Edith Mercer has already confessed to helping you create them. At the mention of Edith's name, Richard's composure finally cracks. That senile old woman doesn't know what she's talking about. It was 30 years ago. Officer Barrett steps forward. So, you do know, Miss Mercer. Richard realizes his mistake too late. He looks at Patricia, whose face has gone ashen. We want our lawyer, she says stiffly. We're not saying anything more without representation. That's your right, Officer Mills says. But we'd like you both to come down to the station to answer some questions. This is outrageous, Richard blusters. But there's fear in his eyes now. You can't possibly believe this fantasy. I step closer to him, closer than I've willingly been in years. Why did you do it? Why steal a child only to treat her like she was nothing to you? For a moment, something like shame flickers across his face. Then it hardens again. You have no idea what you're talking about. Mr. and Mrs. Preston, Officer Barrett says firmly. Please come with us. As they're escorted out, Patricia turns back to me, her face contorted with a mixture of fear and defiance. We gave you a home. We clothed you, fed you. Without us, who knows where you'd have ended up? The irony of her statement is so absurd. I actually laugh. A sharp, bitter sound that makes her flinch. Without you, I would have grown up with my real family. People who wanted me, who loved me, who have spent 3 decades and millions of dollars trying to find me. Richard is silent as the officers lead them to separate patrol cars. I watch from the bakery doorway, Daniel beside me as they drive away. What happens now? I ask, suddenly exhausted. Now we wait for the DNA results, Daniel says gently. But based on their reaction, I think we already know the truth. My phone buzzes with a text from an unknown number. Sierra, this is Benjamin Wilson. Daniel told us what's happening. Claire and I are on our way to you. We'll be there by tomorrow morning. I hope that's okay. I show the message to Daniel, who nods. I told them about the confrontation. They wanted to give you space, but they've waited 30 years. I finish, tears finally filling my eyes. Tell them yes. Tell them I want to meet them. I don't reopen the bakery. Zoe handles calling our regular customers to explain the unexpected closure. I don't tell her why. How could I? Just that there's a family emergency. Daniel stays with me through the afternoon, making calls, updating the Wilsons, speaking with the police. The Preston have been released pending investigation, but have been ordered not to contact me. What about my brothers? I ask suddenly, the thought occurring to me for the first time. Matthew and James, did they know? It's hard to say, Daniel replies, looking thoughtful. They would have been very young when it happened. James is 2 years younger than me. Matthew's 4 years younger. They might not even remember when I first came. We'll need to investigate their involvement, if any. But for now, let's focus on reuniting you with your birth family. Birth family. The word sounds strange. For so long, I'd accepted that I had no real family, that I was alone in the world. Now, I'm preparing to meet the parents I was stolen from 3 decades ago. Where are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments below, and hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever wondered about your true origins. You'll definitely want to stick around for what happened next. I spend the evening in a state of nervous anticipation, cleaning my already clean apartment, changing clothes 3 times, wondering what to say to these strangers who are my parents. Daniel arranges for me to stay at a hotel for the night. Just as a precaution, he says, though we both know he's concerned about the Prestons. Before I leave, I pack an overnight bag and a small photo album. Pictures of me growing up that I took when I left the Preston house. Not because they were happy memories, but because I didn't want them to have any part of me anymore. In the hotel room, I spread the photos out on the bed. School pictures where I'm not quite smiling. Christmas mornings where Matthew and James are surrounded by presents while I have just 1 or 2 small packages. Family vacations where I'm always slightly separate from the others, often taking the photo rather than being in it. Did my real parents take a lot of pictures? Do they have albums of my first 4 years carefully preserved? Will they expect me to remember them? To feel some kind of instant connection? I barely sleep, and by morning, I'm a bundle of nerves. Daniel picks me up at 9 a.m. looking surprisingly fresh despite what must have been a long night for him too. Any update from the police? I ask we drive back to my bakery where I've agreed to meet the Wilsons. They've begun a formal investigation. The FBI has been notified given the interstate nature of the crime. He glances at me and we got preliminary DNA results back this morning. My heart skips a beat. And 99.9% match. You are Sierra Wilson, even though I've known it in my heart since Edith approached me at the funeral. Hearing the scientific confirmation makes it real in a way it wasn't before. I press a hand to my mouth, trying to contain the soba that wants to escape. They'll be here in about 30 minutes, Daniel says gently. They flew in last night and stayed at a hotel. What are they like? I ask, desperate for any information. My real parents, Daniel smiles. The first genuine smile I've seen from him. They're good people. They never lost hope of finding you. Not for a day. Benjamin built his tech company partly to fund the search and to establish the reward. Claire runs a foundation for missing children. Your disappearance shaped their entire lives. Do they have other children? A shadow crosses his face. No, they wanted to, but after you were taken, well, the trauma of that loss affected them deeply. The weight of that settles on me. Not only was I stolen from them, but their chance at a larger family was stolen, too. 30 years of grief and searching. Their lives forever altered by what the Preston did. We arrive at the bakery and I let us in through the back door, flipping on lights, but leaving the closed sign in place. Daniel helps me set up the small sitting area where I sometimes host special customers for afternoon tea. I'll go meet them and bring them in through the back, Daniel says, checking his watch. Give you a moment to prepare yourself. After he leaves, I stand in the middle of my bakery, heart pounding. What do you say to parents you haven't seen since you were 4 years old? What do they want from me? What if they don't like who I've become? I hear car doors outside, voices approaching the back entrance. Daniel's voice saying something reassuring, a woman's voice high with emotion. A man's deeper tones trying to sound calm but wavering slightly. And then the door opens and they're there. My parents, older than in the newspaper photos, but immediately recognizable. The woman, Claire, has my curly hair, though hers is silver now. The man, Benjamin, has my eyes, the same unusual gray-blue. For a long moment, we just stare at each other. The gulf of 30 lost years stretching between us. Then Claire steps forward, hand outstretched as if she's afraid I might disappear again if she moves too quickly. Sierra, she whispers, my name a prayer on her lips. Is it really you? Yes, I say, my voice barely audible. It's me. Claire covers her mouth with her hand, tears streaming down her face. Benjamin stands behind her, one hand on her shoulder, his own eyes glistening. May I? Claire begins, then stops overwhelmed. May I hug you? The question is so tentative, so careful that something breaks open inside me. I nod, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. She steps forward and wraps her arms around me. She's small. I'm at least 4 and taller, but her embrace is fierce, as if she's afraid I'll be snatched away again. Benjamin joins us, his arms encircling us both. And for the first time in my memory, I know what it feels like to be held by parents who actually want me. We stay like that for what feels like both an eternity and not nearly long enough. When we finally separate, all 3 of us are crying. I'm sorry, Claire says, wiping her eyes. We promised ourselves we wouldn't overwhelm you. It's okay, I assure her, finding my voice again. This is overwhelming for all of us. Where are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments below and hit that like and subscribe button. If you've ever experienced a reunion that changed everything, you'll definitely want to stick around for what happened next. Daniel discreetly excuses himself, promising to return later. We settle at the small table I've prepared. The awkwardness of strangers mixed with the profound connection of family. We have so many questions, Benjamin says, his voice steadier now. But most importantly, are you all right? Has your life been? He trails off, clearly struggling with how to ask if the people who stole me treated me well. I'm okay now, I say carefully. My childhood wasn't ideal, but I've built a good life for myself. I gesture around the bakery. This place is mine. I worked hard for it. Pride flashes in their eyes, such a strange, unfamiliar expression directed at me. Tell us about yourself, Claire urges. Anything you're comfortable sharing, so I do. I tell them about leaving the Preston at 21, working multiple jobs while taking night classes, saving every penny to open my bakery. I tell them about my friends, my small but meaningful life. I carefully edit out the worst parts of my childhood. The neglect, the emotional abuse, the constant feeling of being unwanted. There will be time for those truths later. And you? I ask when I've run out of easy things to share. Daniel told me a little, but I'd like to hear from you. They exchange a look loaded with 3 decades of shared grief before Benjamin speaks. After you disappeared, we nearly didn't survive it as a couple, as individuals. He reaches for Claire's hand. But we made a pact that we would never stop looking for you. Never stop hoping. Benjamin built his company from the ground up. Claire continues. Wiltech started as a security software firm focusing on child safety technology. Now it's a Fortune 500 company. The reward money came from that. Benjamin explains, every year on your birthday, I'd increase it. It started as a financial incentive for information, but over time it became something more. A measure of how much we missed you, how much we'd give to have you back. And I started the Finding Home Foundation, Claire adds. We help families of missing children with resources, support, private investigators when police investigations stall. Like Daniel, I say, she nods. He's been with us for 15 years. He's found 17 missing children during that time. But never me, I say softly. Until now. Benjamin's voice breaks on the words. Sierra, I need you to know something. The reward money, it's yours regardless of what happens next. Whether you want us in your life or not, whether you can forgive us for not protecting you, forgive you. I interrupt, stunned. You have nothing to be forgiven for. You didn't do anything wrong. We let you out of our sight, Claire says, her voice hollow with an old familiar guilt. Just for a moment. I've relived that moment every day for 30 years. I reach across the table and take their hands in mine. Listen to me. What happened wasn't your fault. It was Richard and Patricia Preston's fault, only theirs. Something shifts in their expressions. A loosening, a release. Perhaps it's the first time in 3 decades they've truly believed those words. The DNA results are conclusive, Benjamin says after a moment, changing the subject. But the police will want formal statements from all of us. And there will likely be a trial eventually. I know, I say. I'm ready for that. There's something else, Claire says hesitantly. We've kept your room at our house all these years. We've kept it ready for you. She hurries on. Not that we expect you to move in or anything like that. You have your own life, but we'd love for you to visit whenever you're comfortable. I'd like that, I say, surprised to find I mean it. My phone buzzes. A text from Matthew Preston. Sierra, we need to talk. James and I had no idea. Please believe me. I show the message to Benjamin and Claire. Your brothers? Claire asks, then amends. The Preston's sons. Yes, I confirm. I don't know if they knew the truth or not. That's for the police to determine, Benjamin says, a hardness entering his voice for the first time. Anyone who kept you from us? I don't think they knew. I say they were younger than me, but they benefited from it, whether they realized it or not. As I say the words, the full reality of what was stolen from me crashes down all at once. Not just a family who loved me, but a life of privilege and opportunity. Instead of being treated as worthless by the Preston, I could have grown up as Sierra Wilson, cherished daughter of Benjamin and Claire, with every advantage and opportunity. The unfairness of it is staggering. Benjamin seems to read my thoughts. We can never get back the time that was stolen from us, he says gently. But we have now and the future. If you want that. I do, I say, surprising myself with the certainty I feel. I really do. 2 days later, I stand on the doorstep of a beautiful craftsman-style home in one of Seattle's most exclusive neighborhoods, my heart hammering against my ribs. Benjamin and Claire. I'm still getting used to thinking of them as mom and dad. Wait patiently for me to be ready to enter. Take your time, Claire says softly. There's no rush. I take a deep breath and nod. Benjamin unlocks the door and steps aside, allowing me to enter first. The house is warm and inviting, filled with natural light and tasteful furnishings. Not ostentatious despite the obvious wealth behind it. Photos line the walls and shelves, many of a small blonde girl. Me in my first 4 years. Me smiling and loved. Would you like a tour? Benjamin asks, watching me carefully. Yes, I manage overwhelmed by the evidence of how much I was cherished. Where are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments below and hit that like and subscribe button. If you've ever wondered what your life might have been like on a different path, you'll definitely want to stick around for what happened next. They show me through the first floor. The living room with its wall of books. The kitchen where Claire tells me she used to bake with me. You loved helping with cookies, even though you usually ate more dough than made it to the oven. The sunroom overlooking a lush backyard with a treehouse that Benjamin built when I was 3. Then, with gentle solemnity, they lead me upstairs. This is your room, Claire says, pausing outside a closed door. We've updated it over the years based on what we imagined you might like. If it's too much, I want to see it. I assure her. Benjamin opens the door and I step into a space that exists somewhere between a shrine to a lost 4-year-old and a room designed for a woman who never had the chance to grow up here. The walls are a soft sage green. The furniture simple but elegant bookshelves line one wall filled with books for every age. Picture books from my early childhood, then chapter books, young adult novels. And finally classics and contemporary fiction as if they'd continued to buy books for me as I grew. On the dresser sit framed photos of me as a toddler alongside empty frames, spaces waiting to be filled with new memories. A desk in the corner holds a computer and a stack of sketchbooks. You love to draw, Claire explains, following my gaze. We thought you might still, I shake my head. The Preston didn't encourage creativity, I say, the words coming out flatter than intended. I haven't drawn since I was little. Pain flashes across their faces, but they quickly mask it. There's something else we want to show you, Benjamin says after a moment, leading me to a door in the hallway. This was going to be your art studio once you were old enough. He opens the door to a light-filled space with easels, shelves of art supplies, and a large worked. Unlike my bedroom, this room doesn't feel frozen in time. It feels like possibility. We always believed we'd find you, Claire says quietly. We had to. I turn away, overcome with emotion, and my gaze falls on a door at the end of the hall. What's in there? A shadow crosses their faces. That was going to be a nursery, Benjamin admits. For a sibling we were planning to adopt after we couldn't find you, but it never felt right. The weight of all that was stolen, not just from me, but from them, settles heavily on my shoulders. A family that never grew. A room that was never filled. 30 years of holding space for a child who wasn't there. I'd like some time alone, I say suddenly. Just to process all this. Of course, Claire says immediately. Would you like to stay in your room or we can show you to the guest room if that would be more comfortable? My room is fine, I say, testing how the words feel. My room, not a converted closet or a spare room grudgingly given, but a space that was always meant to be mine. They leave me with gentle reassurances that I should take all the time I need. I sit on the edge of the bed, my bed, and look around at the life that was prepared for me, waiting patiently for 30 years. On the nightstand is a small music box. I open it and a delicate melody begins to play. Something stirs in the deepest recesses of my memory. This tune, these notes. I close my eyes and for a fleeting moment, I'm 4 years old again, safe and secure, listening to this melody as I fall asleep. The memory is gone as quickly as it came, leaving me aching for more. Will other memories return? Or are those first 4 years lost to me forever? My phone buzzes with another text from Matthew. Please, Sierra, just 10 minutes. We've been looking for you everywhere. We had no idea what our parents did. Let us explain. I hesitate, then type back. Tomorrow, 10 a.m. at my bakery. You and James only. No Richard or Patricia. His response is immediate. Thank you. We'll be there. I set the phone aside and continue exploring the room, opening drawers filled with clothes that track the ages I would have been. All removed from their original packaging and washed, as if Claire wanted them to feel lived in, ready for my return. In the closet, I find a small box labeled Sierra's Treasures. Inside are a child's keepsakes. A collection of smooth stones. Seashells from a beach trip. A pressed flower. A small toy truck. The blue truck from my fragments of memory. I hold it in my hand, turning it over. There's a name written on the bottom in a child's uneven letters. Sierra. Something breaks loose inside me. Not quite a memory, but a feeling of certainty. This was mine. I held this, played with this, loved this. For the first time since learning the truth. I allow myself to cry freely. For the little girl who was stolen. For the family that was broken. For all the years lost that we can never get back. But also unexpectedly for the life I managed to build despite everything. The strength I found within myself. The woman I became without their guidance. There's a soft knock at the door. Sierra. Claire calls. Are you hungry? I made lunch but no pressure. I wipe my tears. Still clutching the blue truck. I'll be right down. I call back. I am Sierra Wilson and I am finally home. The bakery is closed to customers, but I've been up since 5 a.m. anyway, baking. It's what I do when I'm anxious, and today I'm very anxious indeed. Claire is with me. After spending last night in my childhood bedroom, I asked if she would come back to the city with me for this meeting. Benjamin wanted to come, too, but I thought his barely contained rage toward the Preston might make the conversation with Matthew and James more difficult. He reluctantly agreed to stay home, though he made me promise to call immediately afterward. You don't have to do this, Claire says, watching me aggressively. Need dough. You don't owe them anything. I know, I say, pushing my hands into the soft giving mass. But I need answers. And if they really didn't know, I don't finish the thought. What if they didn't know? Does it change anything? Does it make up for the years of small cruelties of always being treated as less than? At precisely 10 a.m., there's a knock on the bakery's front door. Claire squeezes my shoulder in silent support. As I wipe my hands and go to let them in. Where are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments below and hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever had to confront people from your past who hurt you. You'll definitely want to stick around for what happened next. Matthew and James Preston stand awkwardly on the sidewalk. They look terrible, unshaven, dark circles under their eyes. Their usually impeccable clothing rumpled. Good. A petty part of me thinks they should suffer a little. I unlock the door and step back to let them in, not offering any greeting. Sierra, Matthew begins, then stops when he notices Claire standing by the counter, arms crossed. Oh, I didn't realize you'd have company. This is Claire Wilson, I say flatly. My mother. They both flinch at the word mother, their eyes darting between us, no doubt, noting the resemblance. So, it's true, James says, his voice hollow. What they're saying on the news. The story broke yesterday. Kidnapped IRS found after 30 years, though thankfully no outlets have published my current name or location yet. Yes, I confirm. It's true. I was kidnapped by Richard and Patricia Preston when I was 4 years old. They forged adoption papers and pretended I was their unwanted charity case for 21 years. Matthew runs a hand through his hair, a gesture so familiar it makes my chest ache with conflicted emotions. Sierra, we had no idea. You have to believe us. Do I? I ask coolly. We were just kids. James protests. I was 2 when you came to live with us. Matthew was barely born. How would we have known? But as you got older, I press. You never wondered why I was treated so differently. Why I had to do all the chores while you 2 had everything handed to you. Why I was the adopted one and never just your sister. They exchange guilty looks. We thought that's just how adoption worked, Matthew says lamely. That you weren't really part of the family in the same way and that seemed okay to you. James looks down. We were kids. We accepted what our parents told us. And by the time we were old enough to question it, I was gone. I finish for him. We tried to find you. Matthew says earnestly. After you left, Mom and Dad wouldn't talk about it. Said you were ungrateful and wanted nothing to do with the family. But we looked for you, asked around. We just never found you. Claire speaks for the first time, her voice controlled but icy. And it never occurred to you to wonder why a 21-year-old would completely cut off her family. What might have driven her to that? The brothers shift uncomfortably. We knew things weren't great for her, James admits. But we were selfish teenagers wrapped up in our own lives. When did you find out the truth? I ask. 2 days ago. Matthew says, when the police came back with more questions for Mom and Dad, they wouldn't tell us anything, but we overheard enough. And then we confronted them and Dad admitted it. He was crying. James adds, as if this somehow mitigates 30 years of crimes. He said it was never supposed to happen that way, that they were desperate for money and it was just supposed to be a quick ransom demand. But then the story got too big and they panicked. And Mom, I ask, already knowing the answer. Matthew's expression hardens. She doesn't think they did anything wrong. Says they gave you a better life than you would have had in foster care after they found you abandoned. A bitter laugh escapes me. A better life? They treated me like Cinderella without the fairy godmother. They made me feel worthless every single day. We're so sorry, James says, his eyes wet. We should have seen it. Should have done something. Yes, I agree coldly. You should have. Claire puts a hand on my arm, a gentle reminder that I don't have to do this, that I can ask them to leave at any time. But now that they're here, I find I have more questions. What happens now with your parents? They're under house arrest. Matthew says their passports have been confiscated. The FBI has taken over the investigation. There's talk of federal kidnapping charges, fraud, identity theft. They'll go to prison, James adds, his voice hollow. And they should. What they did was unforgivable. And where does that leave us? I ask. The question that's been haunting me since they first texted. They exchange a look I can't quite interpret. That's up to you, Matthew says carefully. We understand if you never want to see us again, but we're hoping that someday you might be able to think of us as brothers again, or at least as people who care about you and want to make amends. We can't change the past, James adds. But we want to be part of your future if you'll let us. I look at Claire, whose expression says clearly that this is my decision alone. I don't know, I say honestly. I don't know if I can separate you from what your parents did. From how I was treated in that house. I need time. We understand, Matthew says quickly. Take all the time you need. We'll be here. Whatever you decide. As they turn to leave, James pauses. For what it's worth, Sierra, we always wished you'd been treated better. We just didn't know how wrong it really was. After they're gone, I sink onto a bakery stool, emotionally drained. You handled that remarkably well, Claire says, sitting beside me. Did I? I feel like I should have been angrier or more forgiving. I don't know what the right response is. She takes my hand. There is no right response, only your authentic one. And whatever you're feeling, anger, confusion, even conflicted love for the boys who grew up as your brothers, it's all valid. I lean my head on her shoulder, a gesture that feels both new and somehow ancient. As if my body remembers what my mind cannot. How do I move forward from here? I ask softly. One day at a time, she answers, stroking my hair. Just one day at a time. 2 weeks later, I stand nervously in the kitchen of my childhood home, my real childhood home, stirring a pot of homemade tomato sauce. Claire hovers nearby, not interfering, but clearly wanting to help. You're sure you don't want me to, Mom? I say, the word still new, but becoming more natural each time I use it. I've got this. I cook for a living, remember? She laughs and holds up her hands in surrender. Of course, I'll just check on your father. He's been fussing with that wine selection for an hour. Tonight is important. The first dinner with the extended Wilson family. Aunts, uncles, cousins I never knew I had. All gathering to meet the long-lost Sierra. The pressure to make a good impression is immense. Though Claire and Benjamin insist everyone is simply thrilled I've been found. They're your family. Claire assured me earlier. They'll love you no matter what. A concept so foreign to my experience with the Preston that I still can't quite grasp it. Where are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments below and hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever felt the pressure of meeting new family members. You'll definitely want to stick around for what happened next. As I taste the sauce, adjusting the seasoning, Benjamin enters the kitchen with 2 bottles of wine. Red or white with pasta? He asks, looking genuinely perplexed. I can never remember the rules. Both, I suggest, smiling at his uncertainty. Let people choose what they prefer. He beams at me as if I've solved a complex equation. Brilliant. That's exactly what we'll do. In these small moments, I catch glimpses of myself in them. My practical nature reflected in Claire. My attention to detail mirrored in Benjamin. Traits I'd always attributed to my own determination are perhaps hereditary after all. The doorbell rings and Benjamin nearly drops the wine bottles in his haste to answer it. They're here, Claire says, smoothing her dress nervously. Are you ready? As I'll ever be, I reply, wiping my hands on a towel, and taking a deep breath. The next hour is a blur of introductions, exclamations over my resemblance to Claire, tearful hugs from aunts I've never met, and cousins who keep saying, I can't believe you're really here. My father's sister, Elizabeth, holds my face between her hands and says, you have the Wilson eyes through and through. My mother's brother, Michael, tells me stories of my first birthday party. How I smashed cake all over my face and laughed until I had hiccups. It's overwhelming, but in the best possible way. These people have been waiting for me, holding space for me, never forgetting the little girl who disappeared. During dinner, my Uncle Robert raises his glass in a toast. To Sierra, who has found her way home against all odds. And to Ben and Claire, who never lost faith. To Sierra. Everyone echoes, glasses raised, eyes shining. I look around the table at these faces, my family, and feel something I've rarely experienced before. Belonging. After dinner, as everyone moves to the living room for coffee and dessert, my cousin Allison pulls me aside. I don't know if you remember, she says hesitantly. But we were best friends when we were little. We were only 4, but we were inseparable. I shake my head apologetically. I'm sorry. I don't remember much from before. That's okay, she assures me quickly. I just wanted you to know that I never forgot you. Every birthday, I'd ask Aunt Claire if they'd found you yet. Her eyes fill with tears. I've missed you my whole life, even though I barely knew you. I'm not sure how to respond to such pure emotion, but I find myself hugging her. This cousin who has carried the memory of our friendship for 3 decades. Later, as the evening winds down, Claire finds me in a quiet corner, watching the family interactions with a mixture of wonder and wistfulness. Overwhelming? She asks softly. A little, I admit, but in a good way. They're also welcoming. They've been waiting a long time to welcome you home. She hesitates, then adds, there's something we haven't talked about yet. The reward money. I stiffen slightly. I told you I don't want it. I know that's what you said, but Ben and I have discussed it, and we feel strongly about this. That money is yours. We set it aside for you, and regardless of how you came back to us, it belongs to you. But I didn't find myself, I argue. Edith Mercer has already been given a substantial thank you gift. Claire interrupts gently. But the reward fund, all $91 million, we've already transferred it into a trust in your name. My head spins at the amount. More money than I could spend in several lifetimes. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything. Just know that it's there for whatever you want to do with it. Continue your bakery, expand it, travel the world, go back to school, anything at all. Or donate it. I suggest an idea forming to help other missing children. Claire's eyes fill with tears. That would be a beautiful use for it if that's what you want. The evening ends with more hugs, promises to get together soon, invitations to various family events in the coming months. As the last guests leave, I help Claire and Benjamin clean up, falling into an easy rhythm that feels both new and familiar. Thank you, I say as we load the dishwasher together. For everything, for never giving up on me. Benjamin pulls me into a fierce hug. We couldn't give up. You're our daughter. Later, lying in my childhood bed, surrounded by the life I should have had, I think about the Prestons. Their preliminary hearing is next week. The evidence against them is overwhelming. Not just Edith Mercer's testimony, but financial records showing the cash withdrawal just before I came to live with them. Phone records from that time period. And most damning of all, DNA proof that I am without question Sierra Wilson. My phone buzzes with a text message. It's from James. Just checking in. Hope you're doing okay. I've been sporadically responding to messages from Matthew and James. Not ready to cut them off entirely, but not sure how to forge a new relationship with them. They are, in some strange way, the only connection to my past. Even if that past was built on lies. I'm good. I text back. Having dinner with my extended family tonight. There's a long pause before his response comes through. That's great. You deserve a real family. I set the phone aside without replying. Too many conflicting emotions swirling within me. Tomorrow I'll meet with the prosecutors to prepare for the hearing. Tomorrow I'll have to face Richard and Patricia Preston across the courtroom. But tonight, I am Sierra Wilson, daughter of Benjamin and Claire, surrounded by the love I was meant to have all along. And for now, that is enough. The courtroom is smaller than I expected, intimate in a way that makes it impossible to hide from the intensity of the moment. I sit between Benjamin and Claire in the front row behind the prosecution table, aware of every eye upon us. The preliminary hearing is just to determine if there's enough evidence to proceed to trial, but it feels monumental. The first public acknowledgement of what was done to me. Daniel Harlow sits with us, a steady presence in the storm. Across the aisle, Matthew and James sit alone, no other family members having come to support their parents. They nod solemnly to me as we enter, but don't approach. You okay? Benjamin whispers, his hand protective on my shoulder. I nod, not trusting my voice. The truth is, I don't know how I feel. The last 2 weeks have been a whirlwind of emotion. Joy at finding my real family, rage at what was stolen from me, confusion about my place in the world. Now, where are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments below and hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever had to face people who wronged you in a courtroom. You'll definitely want to stick around for what happened next. A door opens and Richard and Patricia Preston are led in by court officers. They're not in handcuffs. This isn't a criminal trial yet, but they look diminished somehow. Richard's shoulders slump in a way I've never seen before. Patricia's normally perfect hair and makeup look hastily applied. Their eyes find me immediately, identical expressions of shock crossing their faces as they take in Benjamin and Claire on either side of me. Perhaps they expected me to be alone, as I was for so many years under their roof. The judge enters and we all rise. The proceedings begin with formal introductions and explanations of the hearing's purpose. The prosecutor, a sharp-eyed woman named Janelle Martinez, outlines the charges: kidnapping across state lines, identity fraud, falsification of government documents. The evidence will show, she says crisply, that on April 12, 1994, the defendants abducted 4-year-old Sierra Wilson from her family home in Seattle, transported her to Portland, Oregon, and subsequently used fraudulent documents to establish a new identity for her as their purported adopted child. The defense attorney, an expensive-looking man in a tailored suit, argues that the statute of limitations has expired on most of the charges, a technicality immediately shot down by the judge, who points out that federal kidnapping has no statute of limitations, nor do many of the fraud charges when they involve a minor. As witnesses are called Edith Mercer, frail but determined, FBI agents who worked the original case, forensic accountants who traced suspicious cash withdrawals. I feel strangely detached, as if I'm watching a movie about someone else's life until they call me to the stand. I've been prepared for this moment, but nothing can truly ready you for sitting across from the people who stole your life, speaking the truth they tried so hard to hide. Ms. Wilson, Prosecutor Martinez begins deliberately using my real name. Please tell the court about your relationship with the defendants. I take a deep breath and look directly at Richard and Patricia. They raised me from age 4 until I left their home at 21. They told me I was adopted, but treated me very differently from their biological children. I was required to do most of the household chores, received fewer privileges, and was frequently reminded that I should be grateful they had taken me in. And how did you discover your true identity? At Walter Preston's funeral 2 weeks ago, a woman named Edith Mercer approached me. She told me I had been kidnapped, not adopted, and showed me newspaper articles about my disappearance. She had helped falsify the adoption papers. What was your reaction to this information? I consider the question carefully. At first disbelief, then anger, then relief in a way. It explained why I had always been treated as less than. It wasn't because there was something wrong with me. It was because I was never meant to be there at all. The questioning continues, each answer pulling another thread from the carefully constructed lie I'd lived in for so long. When the defense attorney's turn comes, his approach is subtle but clear. Paint Richard and Patricia as misguided but well-intentioned, suggest that they genuinely believed they were rescuing an abandoned child. Isn't it true? He asks with practiced concern, that the Preston provided you with food, shelter, education, and medical care throughout your childhood. The bare minimum, I respond, refusing to be manipulated. Yes, I was fed. Yes, I had a roof over my head. But I was also made to work for those basics in a way their biological children never were. And yet they kept you, he presses. They didn't abandon you or place you in foster care. Something snaps inside me. They kept me because returning me would have meant admitting they had stolen me, I say, my voice rising slightly. They kept me as free household labor. They kept me while deliberately depriving me of love, of belonging, of my true identity and family. I look directly at Richard and Patricia, who both flinch under my gaze. They didn't keep me out of kindness. They kept me because they were afraid of getting caught. The defense attorney has no follow-up to that. When I'm finally allowed to step down, my legs are shaky, but my mind is clear. I've spoken my truth. No matter what happens next, they can never take that from me. The hearing continues with expert testimony about the DNA match. 99.9% confirmation that I am the biological daughter of Benjamin and Claire Wilson. Financial records showing suspicious cash withdrawals by Richard Preston just before my adoption. Phone records placing him in Seattle on the day I disappeared. By the time the judge calls a recess for lunch, the outcome seems inevitable. There is more than enough evidence to proceed to trial. In the courthouse hallway, Benjamin wraps a protective arm around my shoulders. "You did beautifully," he says, his voice thick with emotion. "So strong. We're so proud of you," Claire adds, squeezing my hand. I'm about to respond when I notice Matthew and James hovering nearby, clearly wanting to speak with me, but hesitant to approach while I'm with my parents. "Give me a minute," I ask Benjamin and Claire, who exchange a look but nod and step away to give me privacy. "You were incredible in there," Matthew says as they approach. "Telling the truth like that with them staring you down. It wasn't easy, I admit. But it was necessary, not just for me, but for my parents." "My real parents," I clarify, though I don't need to. James nods, his eyes darting toward Benjamin and Claire, who are pretending not to watch us. "They seem like good people." "They are," I confirm. "They never stop looking for me." An uncomfortable silence falls between us, thick with unspoken questions and regrets. "Have you talked to your parents today?" I ask finally. Matthew shakes his head. "They don't want to see us. They think we've betrayed them by believing you." "Have you?" I challenge. "I betrayed them." "I mean, no," James says firmly. "They betrayed themselves when they stole a child and lied about it for 30 years. We're just refusing to be complicit in the lie anymore." His directness surprises me. Of the two brothers, James was always the follower, the people pleaser. This newfound backbone is unexpected. "What will you do if they go to prison?" I ask, curious, despite myself. "When they go to prison," Matthew corrects. "And we'll do what we've been doing. I'll continue teaching high school history. James will finish his medical residency. Life goes on." He hesitates. "We'd like you to be part of that life if you're willing. Not as a replacement for your real family, but as friends, maybe eventually." I don't have an answer for him yet, so I just nod noncommittally. We should get back in there. The hearing's about to resume. As we part ways, James catches my arm gently. "For what it's worth, Sierra, I'm glad you found your way home." The afternoon session is brief but decisive. The judge rules that there is more than sufficient evidence to proceed to a criminal trial. Richard and Patricia are formally charged, and bail is set at an amount so high it's clearly designed to keep them in custody. As they're led away, Patricia turns to look at me one last time. There's no remorse in her eyes, only cold resentment, as if I've somehow wronged her by reclaiming my true identity. Richard at least has the decency to look ashamed. Outside the courthouse, reporters have gathered, alerted to the sensational story. Benjamin and Claire shield me from their questions as Daniel helps us navigate to a waiting car. The prosecutors believe the Preston will likely accept a plea deal, Daniel tells us as we drive away. The evidence is overwhelming, and a trial would only expose them to the maximum sentences. How much time would they serve? I ask. With federal kidnapping charges, a minimum of 20 years, possibly life, he replies. Even with a plea, they're looking at significant prison time. I absorb this in silence. Justice, yes, but there's no sentence that could restore the 30 years stolen from us. Back at my parents' house, we sit in the kitchen, emotionally drained from the day. Claire makes tea, a small, nurturing gesture that still feels novel to me. "What happens now?" I ask, cradling the warm mug. "Now," Benjamin says, reaching for my hand. "We begin to build a future together." It sounds simple when he says it like that, but I know it will be anything but simple. We have 30 years of absence to navigate, expectations to manage, relationships to define. Yet, looking at these two people who never stopped searching for me, I find I'm ready for the challenge. Together, I agree. And for the first time since discovering the truth, I feel the weight of the past beginning to lift. 6 months later, I stand in the gleaming kitchen of my new bakery, Wilson and Daughter, arranging fresh pastries in the display case for our grand opening. The name was Claire's idea, a public acknowledgement of my restored identity and family connection. Richard and Patricia Preston accepted a plea deal, as Daniel predicted, 25 years each with no possibility of parole for at least 15. Justice, or as close as we'll ever come to it. The reward money, my money, has been put to multiple purposes. Half went to establish a foundation for families of missing children, providing resources beyond what law enforcement can offer. A quarter is invested for my future. The remainder funded this beautiful new bakery, 3 times the size of my old one, with a state-of-the-art kitchen and a cozy cafe area. Need any help? Benjamin asks, appearing from the back office where he's been setting up the new accounting software. At 68, he's officially retired from Wilt Tesh, but still consults occasionally. Mostly though, he spends his time helping me with the business side of the bakery, learning to bake with mixed results and making up for lost time. Where are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments below and hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever rebuilt your life after trauma. You'll definitely want to stick around for what happened next. I think we're all set, I tell him, straightening a stack of the custom napkins Claire designed featuring our logo. A simple line drawing of a whisk inside a house, representing the blending of baking and family. Claire emerges from the cafe area where she's been arranging fresh flowers on each table. It looks beautiful, sweetheart, she says, beaming with pride. I couldn't have done it without you both, I say, meaning it. Their support, emotional, practical, financial, has been unwavering throughout this transition. The bell above the door chimes, and we all turn, surprised since we're not officially open for another hour. Matthew and James Preston enter, each carrying a large gift basket. Sorry we're early, Matthew says, taking in our startled expressions. We wanted to drop these off before the crowds arrive. My relationship with the Preston brothers has evolved cautiously over the past months. Not quite friendship, not quite family, but something in between. A connection forged through shared history, however complicated. You didn't have to bring anything, I say, accepting the baskets. Of course, we did, James replies. It's not every day your sister opens her dream bakery. The word sister hangs in the air, neither rejected nor embraced. We've all been careful with labels, recognizing that our connection defies simple categorization. Benjamin and Claire exchange a look. They've been remarkably understanding about my continued contact with Matthew and James, never pushing me to cut ties despite their understandable resentment toward anything Preston. We won't stay, Matthew says, sensing the slight tension. Just wanted to wish you luck. We'll come back during regular hours next week. After they leave, Claire wraps an arm around my waist. You have a big heart, Sierra. Your capacity for forgiveness is remarkable. Not forgiveness, I correct. Understanding they were children too, victims of their parents' decisions in a different way. The rest of the morning passes in a blur of final preparations. At precisely 10 a.m., Benjamin unlocks the front door and Wilson and Daughter Bakery officially opens to the public. The response is overwhelming. Our story has been in the news, of course, impossible to avoid with the high-profile nature of the case. And it seems half of Seattle has turned out to support us. By noon, we've sold out of nearly everything, and I've had to start a new batch of my signature cinnamon rolls. Amid the chaos, I spot a familiar face. Edith Mercer, looking healthier than when I last saw her, waiting patiently in line. When she reaches the counter, I come out to greet her personally. I wasn't sure if I should come, she admits, her eyes taking in the bustling bakery. But I wanted to see how you were doing. I'm glad you did, I tell her sincerely. None of this would have happened without you. She shakes her head. I only helped right a wrong that I was part of creating. I don't deserve credit for that. We all have regrets, I say, thinking of my own. The years I spent believing I was unwanted. The defensive walls I built. The opportunities one missed. What matters is what we do with them. After she leaves, clutching a box of pastries I insisted she take free of charge, Claire finds me in a quiet moment. Everything okay? She asks, noticing my contemplative mood. Just thinking about how much has changed in 6 months, how much I've changed. She smiles, tucking a stray curl behind my ear in a gesture that has become comfortingly familiar. You were always extraordinary, Sierra. That's something the Preston couldn't take from you, no matter how hard they tried. By closing time, we're exhausted, but elated. The day has been an unqualified success with pre-orders already stacked up for the rest of the week. As we lock up, a text message arrives from Benjamin's sister, Elizabeth. Family dinner Sunday. Usual time. Allison's bringing that new boyfriend for inspection. We need reinforcements. I laugh, showing the message to Claire and Benjamin. The Wilson family dinners have become a regular part of my life. Chaotic, loving gatherings where I'm gradually finding my place. Shall we tell her we'll be there? Benjamin asks, already knowing the answer. Wouldn't miss it, I confirm. Later, in the quiet of my new apartment, a beautiful space near my parents' home, I sit on my balcony, watching the sunset over Elliott Bay. On the table beside me is a simple blue toy truck, a tangible connection to my earliest years. My phone buzzes with a notification. Someone has made a substantial donation to the Sierra Wilson Foundation for Missing Children, established with half of the reward money. The foundation has already helped reunite 3 families and is providing support services for dozens more. As I watch the sky turn from gold to deep blue, I reflect on the incredible journey of the past 6 months. From Sierra Preston, the unwanted adopted daughter treated as a servant, to Sierra Wilson, cherished daughter, successful business owner, and advocate for missing children. The path forward isn't perfectly clear. There are still wounds to heal, relationships to navigate, a lifetime of catching up to do with my parents. But for the first time in my memory, I'm not walking the path alone. I am Sierra Wilson. I was lost, but now I am found. And my story is just beginning. If this story resonated with you, make sure to like and subscribe for more journeys of discovery, healing, and transformation.